If we move on to this weekend's game, Bernard, our Declan's, I suppose we were all wondering, was he going to rotate the squad come this game? But are his hands tied in many ways, given the injuries?
Well, the Paul O'Connell situation changes everything. Ideally, for my money, Ferris, whose knee is a bit of a project, would have been given a rest, maybe put on the bench and move Sean O'Brien to 6, start Peter O'Mahony. If you do that now and put Peter O'Mahony in there as a starter alongside Donnacha Ryan in the second row, you're lessening the level of experience that you have in that pack, and I'd say he will try and make as few changes now up front as he possibly can.
Would it be worth the risk though, Bernard?
Yeah, I think if you look back to 2009 when we were going for Grand Slam, he did make changes against Scotland away from home. He brought in Dennis Leamy, he brought in Rory Best, and he brought in Peter Stringer just to give them a game ahead of O'Leary, Jamie and Flannery. He may be tempted to do it again. I thought the guys who come off the bench have done well. I thought Tom Court scrummaged very well in the few scrums he got at the weekend. I think Donnacha Ryan has been impressing, Peter O'Mahony, and I think he probably did plan to give some guys game time this week. But whether he goes for it now with O'Connell and Murray being out, I think that 2 changes might be enough, to not to rock the ship too much.
Yeah, I kind of think the tempo that Ireland are playing at now, certainly in the last game and the second half of the Italian game, is where they were 5 years ago. And when you have a squad system that's at that tempo, if you look, for example, when Sean O'Brien came off, he was annoyed about being taken off. There's a huge competitiveness in that team now. So even though some injuries or changes are going to be forced through injury, the guys know when they're out in camp at the moment that if you get into this team, you have to play at that level. And that's hopefully the standard now for the rest of the Six Nations.
We mentioned the O's before, Brendan. What about the possibility of the experienced man coming in at number 10, the other row?
No, I would say he'll stick with Sexton. Certainly if they want to defend the same way against Scotland as they did on Saturday, or yesterday rather, that was led by Johnny Sexton. The same way in the game against Australia in the World Cup, he set the tone defensively. He made 10 tackles against the French. Incredibly aggressive in the tackle, really, really good, not just at the choking, but really good in everything he did defensively, leading the line-up. I don't think this would be the time to be taking him out.
Well, Bernard, if we're talking about O'Gara and Sexton, there is the possibility that what happens in the last 2 games later on might happen. Is there the possibility that Sexton might play at 12?
I think maybe late in the game again, but I don't think it'll start like that. I think Gordon Darcy actually the last 2 games, there's been big question marks about him. He's really stepped up and played well, taking on a leadership role, taking bad ball up through the centre and getting over the gain line. And I think that they'll stick with Darcy and Earls, because Scotland, you don't want to make another change defensively there as well, because Scotland have the best possession stats of any team in the Six Nations. 63%, it's off the scales, and they're actually getting smarter what they do with it. The first game he looked at them against England, he said they can have the ball all day, they won't score. But progressively, in the next 2 games, they've actually been much more dangerous. They've unearthed some young players. So I think changing that, I think it's okay late in the game when everything's settled down. But putting Sexton at 12 to start, that certainly would be an option for me.
Well, Scotland may have the best possession stats, but they have no wins yet, Victor. They must be rubbing their hands with glee coming to Dublin.
Well, in Edinburgh, Murrayfield, they play the width of the pitch. They ruck a hard game there. They move the ball around. It's very pretty rugby. But in reality, when they come to the Viva this weekend, they're going to face an Irish team that will hopefully keep that momentum, and that is why it's important to keep the core of the squad that from the French game, to make sure these guys have a chance to repeat the same type of tempo, and that's exactly where they want to live.
But mentally, what will their heads be like, given that they had that performance, but now they're going to be missing 2 key players, and especially their captain, Paul O'Connell?
Well, mentally this team is strong. It's been around a while. They've had some bad results against Wales, for example. We spoke about if they had that game at the beginning of the season, the one they had last week, things might be different. But you have to be mentally strong. Going into this game, you have to have a presence. You have to be almost arrogant, but full of pride to take on the Scots, and don't let them, protect that ball in the breakdown.
OK, well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for now. My thanks to Victor, to Brendan and to Bernard. Ireland's Grand Slam chasing under-20s are live on RT2 on Friday night, so join us then. And we're back, of course, next Monday. Until then, a very good night.